We'll call the regular meeting of the Morgantown Utility Board for Tuesday, April 14, 2020 to order. We had the minutes of the March 23rd meeting provided to us in the read ahead. So if there aren't any corrections. Hello, Barbara.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved. Oh, I'm sorry.
Second.
You need a formal approach. Oh.
Yeah.
I move that we approve the minutes of the last meeting. Is that sufficient? I'm missing my.
March 23rd, 2020.
Thank you. I move that we approve the minutes of March 23rd, the meeting March 23rd, 2020.
Second.
Motion and a second by Tom. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Public portion.
Yeah, we instructed the public to offer public comments through any number of means by 4 o'clock today, and no comments have been received.
Okay. So we will move on to new business, which will be, first thing will be Build America bonds.
Recall that the Build America bonds are taxable bonds, and so there's two main advantages to refinancing that issue. And there's been a limitation that prevents us from refinancing those bonds until this year. We were unable to refinance them in the first 10 years, but now that we're in 2020, they are eligible to be refinanced. They're taxable, and therefore we have to pay a higher interest rate. And the second reason for us wanting to refinance is that we get a federal rebate from the federal government for the higher interest that we've paid. But the government over the years has reduced that rebate somewhat. So the payoff to us is not what was originally anticipated when we issued the bonds, or when we asked the city, more correctly, to issue the bonds. So those are our reasons for wanting to refinance. The difficulty that we face now is that the bond market is highly volatile. It bounces from day to day, and the bonds might be, there might be a favorable environment today for refinancing those bonds, and then the interest rates tomorrow could be completely different, taking away a lot of that benefit. Because the tax rebates are received in June, it is helpful for us to refinance that issue, and those rebates are received semi-annually. So we'll receive one in June, and the next one will be in December. It would be helpful to refinance as soon as possible following June, so that we can avoid paying that taxable interest rate afterwards. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks to prepare for a bond issue. And so my recommendation to the board is that we go ahead and begin those preparations today, but being mindful that our circumstances might change. And so we could spend 6 to 8 weeks getting ready and go to market and find that it's one of those bad days or bad weeks when it does not make sense to refinance, and we might end up aborting or postponing the issue. But the bottom line is we cannot take advantage of good circumstances if those circumstances happen, unless we begin the preparations now. So with that understanding, my recommendation is that we go to City Council and ask for their help in issuing a refinance, prepare for the issuance of a refinancing option. Recall that MUB cannot issue bonds. Only the city can issue the bonds. And so that's why we need to take a proposal to them and explain the advantages of doing so, and ask for their help in preparing that issue. And I would like your permission to go to them at their committee of the whole meeting on April 28th in order to make that proposal.
Okay. Sounds like there's no downside to it, so we're looking for a motion or some comments.
I move to authorize the general manager to present a proposal to the city council at an upcoming meeting of the Committee of the Whole, seeking the city's cooperation to begin joint preparation for issuance of a tax-exempt bond issue for the purpose of effectively refinancing the Build America Bonds Series 2010A.
I'll second.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Motion and a second to authorize general manager to present a proposal to the city council at the Committee of the Whole for refinancing the Build America Bonds Series 2010. Questions on the motion? Nope. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay. Next item would be the Killarney Drive crossing.
Yes, sir. We've been working with the city for the past few weeks to develop an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, and we've made some significant progress in that, even as late as today. But I have not heard confirmation back from the city this afternoon that that we've reached a final agreement to the wording. I think we may have, but I just haven't heard confirmation of that. So my suggestion is that we skip this item, and we'll bring that MOU back to you at the next board meeting.
Okey-doke. Okay, the RFPs for the executive search services.
Yes, sir. The last meeting, the chairman appointed a selection committee made up of Vice Chair Parsons and Treasurer Witt. And that committee has interviewed the two shortlisted firms. Those interviews happened on April 1st. Your packet includes an email from Ms. Parsons reporting the results of those interviews. And so I'll just turn the floor over to either one of those board members if they'd like to make comments to the rest of the board.
Okay, Tom, go ahead and address it first. If there are any questions, we can do it together.
Basically, I think as the memo from Barbara points out, we had the interviews with the two firms, and based on fairly extensive questioning, I think we had approximately 1 hour interviews with each of the two firms. We decided to go ahead with the second interview, which was the Giddings Group. The 2/3 of the Giddings experience and business focuses on the wastewater treatment business. This is definitely a very focused firm versus the first firm, which has a much broader range of types of businesses that they interface with in terms of more on the executive search side. And based on the fact that Giddings is very familiar with the industry that we operate within, and they had vast knowledge and experience, we both agreed that we should recommend that they be contracted to provide the search for the replacement for Tim Ball.
Okay. Barbara, anything to add?
No, they were very good interviews. I can't say that both firms couldn't do the job, but the focus of Giddings was absolutely where we needed to be. They were very familiar with the industry, had ready contacts available, and we both just felt that was the right firm to go with to get what we need.
I might add that in the process of the discussions with Giddings, they agreed to extend a period of time of, I think it was 12 months after we secure a replacement, that they basically would be able to assist us without charge if that person that we select is basically unable to undertake the position.
Okay. Karen, Sarah, you have any comments or questions?
No, I think that sounds great.
Yep. Okay. Well, then we need a motion to approve that.
Okay, I move that we approve the selection of the Giddings Group to provide executive search services related to the recruitment and hiring of a general manager, and further to authorize the general manager and the general counsel to negotiate a contract with the Giddings Group consistent with the request for proposals that we issued on February 14th and the proposal received from Giddings Group on February 28th and supplemented by email dated April 2nd, and further authorizing the general manager to execute all documents related thereto.
Okay.
I second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve the selections of the Giddings Group to provide the executive search services as we requested. Questions on the motion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, we will move forward with the Giddings Group. And I'd like to thank Barbara and Tom for their extra time and efforts to do the interviews and report back in a timely manner.
And
Very
thank you,
comfortable.
Yes, thank you very much.
and thank you for the memo. I thought it laid everything out very well.
Yeah. Total confidence in you guys, so good job.
I know we had a
Alright.
schedule somewhere, but when do they plan to start?
As soon as we approve this,
Oh, great.
Good.
I'm going from memory right now, but as I recall, Ms. Parsons is correct. We'll notify Giddings tomorrow that they've been selected, and we'll invite a submission of a contract immediately. But the schedule allows close to 8 weeks for them to begin their search and identify candidates that they'll then present to the board.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so that's all the new business. Move on to old business, and we have the Coben Creek Reservoir.
Yes, sir. That project, the contractor is Kanawha Stone. They're currently about 23% complete. They've recently achieved completion of placement of concrete for the intake tower. Current work that continues is trimming of the rock faces for the spillway, foundation excavation, and curtain grouting for the dam and the dam foundation. Then moving on over to a sister contract, that's with D&M Construction for the raw water pipeline. D&M is 97% complete in terms of total planned length of pipe. The only thing that they have remaining to do is the board crossing of Don Knotts Boulevard and the installation of some valve vaults at the water treatment plant. But except for those two items of work, they are complete. I'll move on, unless there's questions, I'll move on to the wastewater treatment plant project at Star City.
I have a question. As you indicated, I think in our correspondence, that the details of the replanting of the trees has not been finalized. And because we have to work with other city agencies, do we have a time frame when that would be finalized and the replanting would commence?
We actually don't. We're following the lead of Bopark and the tree board in that case, and we don't have any current conversations happening, but the license agreement lays out well that they'll develop a plan and we will execute that plan at our expense. And so we're waiting to work with those agencies.
Okay. Wastewater, Tim?
Yes, sir. That's the treatment plant in Star City. That contractor is Alleman Schutte. They are about 85% complete. They have achieved a major milestone just in the last week or two. The membrane process, the UV ultraviolet disinfection process, and the new plant outfall pipe, which is the discharge pipe to the river, have all been completed simultaneously and placed into operation. And that is a major milestone in the progress of the project. We're very pleased with that. That was not easily achieved either by the contractor or by our staff. So I want to make a special point of acknowledging Greg Shelto, Jacob Fischel, and the rest of our Star City wastewater plant staff for the extraordinary efforts that they've made to troubleshoot and calibrate those new facilities and to make sure that we have immediate integration of those facilities into the plant operations. Those guys have put unnumbered, limitless numbers of hours, consecutive days spanning for weeks into getting that work accomplished, and they deserve a special thanks.
Well done.
Other work going on there at the site includes the continued construction of a pre-screening building, expanded control building, boiler room modifications, replacement of the influent pumps, which are very large pumps that ultimately have to pump over 20 million gallons a day of flow. And new work about to begin is replacement of blowers in the existing activated sludge process, reinstallation of the chemical odor control system, which has been out of service during the initial phase of this construction. And they'll soon begin draining the first of 3 existing primary clarifiers so that will facilitate relating piping upgrades and mechanical upgrades to those items.
Okay. You want to make any comments on the wastewater, on the complaints?
I'll just comment that there was a mention in a Dominion Post News article today of a complaint received by the county health department, and that news article is accurate. We disclosed that information to the Dominion Post yesterday. We've conducted an investigation of the details made in that complaint, and most of them are inaccurate or exaggerated. We've answered the health department, giving them an accurate assessment of the safety protocols that we and the contractor have in place on the site. And I trust that the health department will find that report to be completely acceptable.
Good. Okay, thank you. So that would conclude old business. We go to general manager's report.
Yes, sir. Under the GM report, I'd just like to begin by again thanking Andrew Stacy from the city communications office for helping us televise this live on Channel 15 and for webcasting both on Facebook Live and on the city's website. So Andrew, thanks for that help. It's much appreciated. Moving into general remarks, COVID-19, of course, continues to dominate much of our management time and most of my own. I'll give credit to our general counsel, Jeff Ray. Jeff developed new policies for us in anticipation, new HR policies in anticipation of the federal requirements that ultimately followed. He did a great job of anticipating where the federal government would go with the new law. And we've been very pleased that our new policies are fully compliant with the new federal law, and were actually enacted in advance of the new federal law. So hats off to Jeff for a nice job with that.
Good.
We've issued a number of additional communications. If you recall in your board packet last month, I gave you a list of 5, 6, or 7 communications that we had issued to the staff. We've issued 6 additional ones in the time frame since the last meeting. We've issued essential worker credentials to all of our staff. Every one of our employees now carries a MUB ID card and a certification of their essential worker status. So if their travels or their requests for testing are challenged, they can present that essential worker credentialing to any officials that ask for it. We've issued a couple of health and safety memos just to encourage the proper precautionary practices for our employees and to repeat that message and drive it home frequently. We've given our employees advice, detailed step-by-step advice on how to request testing for the COVID virus, and again, including assertion of their essential worker status. We've introduced a new daily screening protocol where we ask every person entering our facilities, whether it's a MUB employee or a contract worker, the status of any symptoms that they might have, and looking for them to certify to us, of course, that they are symptom-free before they enter the facility.
You're doing temperature readings?
Pardon me?
You're doing temperature screenings as they come in?
We will. That's been included in the protocol. We're waiting right now for receipt of the thermometers. We've ordered a number of thermometers for that, and unfortunately, they're in transit, but they're not here yet. So as soon as we've received them, we'll implement that portion of the policy as well. But the policy already describes that additional step. And we've also issued guidance to our department heads on what we have called preventive emergency pay sick leave. We have a couple of employees who have been certified by their physician as having underlying pre-existing conditions that make them especially vulnerable to the virus. And so we've provided some special accommodation for those folks in terms of paid time off. Lastly, I'll address the financial impacts of the virus so far. Of course, it's still far too early to get a really accurate measure on some of these things. I quizzed Debbie Osborne on revenues, and because our meter reading is done 1 month after the fact for commercial services, and in most cases, our meter reading is 2 months after the fact for residential services, we're not going to be able to get an accurate snapshot of the actual impact of the virus on meter readings probably for another month or perhaps longer. But I did talk to Greg Celito from the water treatment plant, and as a quick proxy, and I think a decent way of estimating this, we have noticed that our water treatment plant production, which is essentially based on demand, based on customer demand, that water plant production is down 10% for the current 28 days as compared to the 28-day period preceding it, and as compared to the same period a year ago. We have a $35 million budget that annually. That translates into about $2.9 million of budget per month. Therefore, a 10% reduction in those revenues would translate into about $290,000 a month. So that's my estimate. Mr. Witt had asked this morning if we had a gauge yet on the financial impact of essentially the closure of Morgantown. I mean, most of the restaurants are closed, most of the businesses are closed. And yes, so we have seen an impact on that. And I'm projecting that the cost of that in terms of lost revenues is $290,000 a month. We've already sustained one of those months, and my guess is we're going to have another one in front of us.
I have a question on this, if I may. Since we are an agency of the city of Morgantown, the state is supposed to receive upwards of $1.2 billion from the federal government to compensate the state and the resulting political entities therein for the ravages that are associated with this pandemic. And I wonder if we, as an agency of the city, and I'm sure you would be exploring this, would be eligible for a portion of that to help defray the lost revenues that we might be incurring, as well as special costs that you've already begun to detail associated with the compliance with the current shelter in place requirements.
Yes, sir. We're scouring now the utility environment so that we can identify those opportunities to get in line and stake our claim for that federal assistance. Yes, sir. We absolutely will.
Because I think, if we're unable to acquire a significant portion of that, the lost revenues, unfortunately, will have to be borne by our existing customers in the form of significantly higher rate increases than what we might have normally projected.
You're absolutely right. We had a rate increase already planned a year ago to go into effect this July, and the board has very reasonably decided to postpone that increase until the COVID crisis is over. But my guess is by roughly late 2020, late this year or early next year, we'll have to go to the public for a rate increase, and that increase is definitely going to be impacted by this current experience. Whether we get some federal assistance to replace these lost revenues or not, we're clearly going to need a larger increase as soon as normalcy is restored. And I should have mentioned this earlier in this meeting. The refinance of those Build America bonds will help to some extent to, we will enjoy some lower debt service when those bonds are refinanced. And so that will help ease the pain that we're feeling financially right now. And it will help lower that, the gross amount of that rate increase when it's enacted. Just to give you some final additional information on the financial impacts, so far we've had about $46,000 of labor cost in response to COVID events. Almost all of that is in sick leave or extended emergency family leave. It's essentially paid time off. So it's really lost productivity rather than out-of-pocket expenses. Our out-of-pocket expenses have been about $44,000 to date. That'll continue to increase because we're having some of our facilities deep clean, disinfected on a daily basis. We're having others done on a weekly basis, and that's an expensive service, and that will continue until we've emerged from this crisis. So that number is going to continue to go up. That's everything I have under my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Tim. All right, we can go to just the board member issues or discussions. Does anybody have anything they want to bring up to Tim or the staff? Okay, if not, I think there was a request to go to executive session, so need a motion.
I'll move to convene an executive session of the Board of Directors under the provisions of West Virginia Code 6-9A-4B2A to discuss matters related to personnel, and further move that the April 4th, 2020 regular meeting of the Board of Directors be adjourned at the conclusion of the executive session.
I second.
Second, motion is second to convene an executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. So we were looking for Tim and Jeff to participate in the executive session as well as the board members.